Alright, hello sixth grade scientists. So if you have chosen not to watch the Google Meet version of this, or you are having trouble with the Google Meet, I am going to perform the lab here in a video for you to watch. So what I'm going to start with doing is I have this electric tea kettle of hot water that I've heated up. I have 7 jars, 2 thermometers, some tape, hairdryer, and a ruler. And what I'm going to start by doing is filling up, what I'm going to start by doing is measuring 1 foot from the edge of my table using my ruler. Here, got 1 foot. And I'm going to take 1 jar and I'm going to place it on one side of that piece of tape. And then I'm going to take the other jar and I'm going to line it up with the end of that piece of tape. And now what I'm going to do is take my remaining jars and I'm going to use them to make a huddle around my center jar, but I'm going to make sure that they don't quite touch each other. Make them as close as I can without touching. Okay. Now, just so you can see, there, that's all clear. All right, so I'm going to take my kettle of hot water that I've been heating up, and I am going to pour 100 milliliters of hot water into my center jar and into my lonely jar. I'm going to start here. All right, and then my center jar. I'll move it just a little bit so I can see the 100. All right, perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read both those thermometers and I'm going to record that as time 0 in my data table because that is the temperature of the water when 0 time has passed. So for my loner jar, it's like 140. I'm going to come over here, really awkwardly, type in my sheet, and then the temperature of my funnel is also 140. So they're starting out at the same temperature. And then what I'm going to do is fill up each of the jars around my huddle with 100 milliliters of water. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to make it as close as possible. There's one. Two. Three. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to be doing is taking the temperature of my huddle jar and my center jar every minute so that I can see which jar has a bigger change in temperature from my time 0. So I'm going to get my phone and I am going to pull up a 1-minute timer. All right, and it is counting down. So after 1 minute has passed, what I'm going to do is take the temperature of my huddle jar and take the temperature of my single jar, and I am going to see which one has a bigger change in temperature. And I am going to do that once a minute for 10 minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, I'll see which jar lost more heat to the surrounding environment. So, got about 30 seconds left on our timer. And we will see, we are getting close, 20 seconds. So at this point, you've all already made a prediction. You have an idea of which jar is going to lose the most heat. And it might take us a little while to see a difference. It might not lose too much heat too quickly. So if our temperature doesn't change much in our first measurement, that's okay. All right, let me stop our timer. here. So I'll turn this and hopefully you can see it on the camera. Not really. So our Huddle jar is still about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. With our single jar, it's dropping. All right. You guys can't see it. I'm going to call it like 148, or I'm sorry, 138. So we can see that in the first minute, our single jar has lost more heat than our Huddle jar. So I'm going to keep this going for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll check in and we'll see what happened. All right, and I almost forgot to share with you guys one of the most exciting parts of this lab is that we have the Antarctic wind here. So we have a hairdryer with a cool setting. So I'm going to turn on the hairdryer starting on my next trial. So it will have 8 minutes of wind blowing onto our little penguin huddle and our little loner penguin. It's time to check in. I've taken all 10 of my data measurements. So when we look here at this graph that I've generated, both of the jars, the single and the huddle, started out at 140. But after 10 minutes, the single jar is down to 121 degrees Fahrenheit, and our huddle jar is down to 128 degrees Fahrenheit. So when I subtract the final temperature from my starting temperature, I found that the single jar lost 19 degrees and the huddle jar lost 12 degrees. And when I look at my graph, I can see that the line representing the single jar in blue is lower than the line representing the huddle jar in red. So I have numbers and I have a visual representation to show me that the jars lost different amounts of heat. So you can use these numbers in this graph to support your analysis on slides 13 through 17 if you chose not to participate in a Google Meet. Thank you for watching, and please let me know if you have any questions.